Wings of Ember by Michael R. Schacht. Chapter 1. The Alchemist's Bounty. The clock tower chimed in the unseen distance as Dane chased promises of forbidden magic. This was the moment they'd been waiting for. As the hours dragged on throughout his monotonous daily patrol, he thought that it would never come. Lights from high-gabled canal houses slowly diminished. Racing onward, the way ahead was dark as he left his nightly post behind. "Hurry," Naletta called ahead of him. "We're already running late as it is." He could faintly see the outline of his cousin. Her hair, tied back in a ponytail, swung like a dark pendulum, contrasting with his disheveled waves of orange. The garish red of her baggy uniform matched his own, an unfortunate reminder of their place in the city watch. "Fine, but we can't take too long," Dane said as he picked up his pace. "Captain'll chew us out if we're not back on time." Both carried metal staffs, dyed a deep red and tipped with a gold-colored blade. Dane's thumb hovered over the small switch, which jutted out above his grip as they navigated winding alleys. While everyone in the city watch had undergone extensive training to use bolt staffs, necessity seldom called for it. "Then keep up." Naletta moved to a sprint, rushing further away from the main canal and through the fisherman's quarter. Dane followed suit as elegant canal houses made way for modest stone homes which mingled with taverns and coffee houses. The cobbled streets were nearly empty, save for the occasional passerby in overcoats to ward off the cool night breeze. "Where did you get this lead?" Dane finally asked, once no one was around. "Peric," Naletta said quickly. "Told me he's seen this man by an abandoned winery nearby several times now." Dane grimaced. Here we go again. He should have doubted it all from the beginning. Naletta was always quick to latch on to any lead that she could find, and this week's desperation only exacerbated that. "We're risking our jobs for him? I know that he's not exactly the most trustworthy person," she began. Dane crossed his arms. "He once claimed he wrestled a sea serpent after it destroyed his ship and rode its back to shore. Maybe he did, for all we know, but it's the only lead that we've got." She turned to face him, and in the dim glow from nearby street lamps, her violet eyes met his. The desperation across her face accentuated the hope in her stare. He knew just what she was thinking. "The Umbral Guard already sent out their invitations now." "I know," she said. "This could be our last chance, unless you're happy patrolling these canals forever." The idea of remaining in the city watch indefinitely made his head throb. He couldn't count the times that they had to intervene in faulty haggles between vendors and customers, or patrol the same 3 roads around the city's widest canal. 2 years had been plenty. However, that didn't change the reality of his words. The letters were out, and neither of them had one. Before he could reply, Naletta spun around and scurried ahead. Moonbeams highlighted the wooden planks of the docks along the bay as they hurried down the wide promenade where the district's myriad canals spilled into the sea. Lights poured from the wide windows of the Fire Kraken, one of the city's oldest establishments. The tavern's usual patrons blended to non-distinct blurs through the cloudy glass. 2 roads down from the lively pub, they wandered into the darkened boulevard surrounded by derelict stone buildings. The faint glow of the half-moon, occasionally eclipsed by the passing zeppelin, was their only light. A stray cat sprung from one of the narrow alleys, and Dane held his staff before him reflexively. "What happened here?" he asked as the cat scrambled towards the well-lit road behind them. "Uncle Wyatt said parts of the district had been bought out to make more room for canal houses and mansions." Dane recalled his last visit to Peric's tavern, which had been overtaken by the disgruntled venting of fishermen being pushed further from the waterfronts to make room for the city's emerging wealth. His vision adapted to the darkness, and he inspected the crumbling stone dwellings and gutted shops. "What exactly did Peric say?" He attempted to hide his disbelief. "That some so-called alchemist has been selling his tavern's more inebriated customers some gold trinkets at a bargain. At least that's what they think, until they turn into useless junk a few hours later." "Junk?" Dane asked. "Wooden beads, brass buckles, rusty silverware," she replied. Dane finally understood Peric's concern. Having a scheming peddler around the tavern couldn't be good for its reputation, and everyone knew Peric already wasn't helping on that front. And allegedly, he's been going to some old winery on the street every week, precisely at midnight. The implication wasn't lost on him. The so-called alchemist had to be getting his magic from somewhere. Why didn't Peric just go to the Umbral Guard? Dane cocked an eyebrow. All reports of illegal magic had to be made to the Umbral Guard. Failure to do so could lead to severe consequences. Everyone knew that. He did, but they never found the winery, Naletta said. And I suppose his reputation did the rest. As they scanned the area, it became more apparent the stretch was once a commercial hub. Barber shops, an indoor market, a library, and a hat shop could now only be distinguished by faded letters etched into abandoned buildings. He stopped beneath a hanging wooden sign, and Naletta walked to his side. Perched above a boarded-up door, Dane craned his neck to read Waldrick's Winery through the chipped paint. He looked back to the promenade, illuminated by the Fire Kraken's electric lights. How could they miss it? It's right here. Maybe they never bothered checking. Naletta tried in vain to open the locked door before they walked around the building. At the back, windows had been boarded up, and she felt around for a weak spot. Something wasn't right. The Umbral Guard were required to treat even the most outlandish reports regarding illegal magic with unwavering vigilance. They must have found and investigated this place. Found it! Naletta removed a loose wooden board from one of the windows, set it on the ground, and climbed in. Dane poked his head in and had to stifle a sneeze at the whirling dust trailing Naletta. He hadn't thought it possible, but the place was even shabbier on the inside. Moonlight pierced through the countless cracks in the walls and ceiling, revealing warped floorboards. Nice place to spend the evening. Dane climbed in and tiptoed across the creaking floor behind Naletta. Behind a dusty counter, rows of shelves languished beneath a blanket of cobwebs. Maybe the Umbral Guard did come here and didn't find anything. At the far end of the room, a pair of rusty hinges were all that remained of the door that had once stood there. On the other side, more empty shelves were topped with dried-up rat droppings. Naletta tapped on his shoulder and pointed down a steep stairwell. The faintest traces of light revealed the damp stone floors below. They weren't alone. Dane treaded soundlessly after Naletta and twisted his nose as the musky odor hit them at the bottom. Empty wine barrels were piled along the walls, and a strip of yellow light pointed to a narrow corridor at the bottom of the room. Dane and Naletta shared a glance. Perhaps this lead would prove fruitful after all. They inched forward, clinging to the shadows on opposite walls. Muffled voices came into focus, and they stopped toward the end of the hall, just out of sight. Can understand, I'd reckon, a gravelly voice finished saying. That's 200 rillion more than last time. Do you think I'm completely daft? A higher pitch countered. Across from him, Naletta edged her head forward to risk a peek. As impulsive as always, he sighed, and did so as well. The room was spacious, with high stone ceilings accented by wooden beams. A small gas lamp burned at the center, giving off oily scented light. Beside it stood a man with greasy black hair and fox-like eyes, wearing a patchy brown suit. Across the room, a second man lingered in an archway, clad in a slim black overcoat. His face was aged with struggle, and his hairline sat well above his forehead. A leather satchel draped over his shoulder, drawing the gaze of a man by a lamp. He stepped forward, slowly put his hand in his satchel, and within seconds the room was swathed in brilliant light. Once Dane's eyes adjusted to the sudden brightness, he saw the man hold a sphere of solid crystal. Within its prism, an iridescent glow danced between a spectrum of color with a radiance that put the gas lamp to shame. He could practically feel Naletta's grin beside him. 800, or you'll find yourself another Lumarin smuggler. The smuggler stood his ground, and the man snapped back to reality. He ground his teeth, pulled a pile of paper notes from his pocket, and handed them over. Satisfied, the smuggler threw the glistening sphere towards his customer, who failed to catch it. The crystal fell to the ground with a clang. Careful! He dove to grab it. A merchant should treat their wares with care, says the swindler. The smuggler snickered and turned back toward the archway. Or Should I say alchemist? I'll remember that once you can afford such care. Seeing the negotiations coming to a close, Dane glanced over to Naletta. It was time. He breathed in deeply as the jolt of trepidation took hold. As Naletta rushed in ahead of him, he forced himself to his senses and dashed to her side. Both held their bolt staffs between themselves and the two men. "Drop the crystal," Naletta ordered. Both men looked them over, taking in their red uniforms, a size too large for either of them. While panic washed over the alchemist's face, the smuggler smirked. "Umbral guards gotten so smug they're sending City Watch to do their grunt work now?" He glanced at their faces. "And juniors at that. Enough chit-chat." Dane deepened his voice. "Now why don't you just hand over the Lumerant and come with us?" "I know opportunists when I see them," the alchemist said, emboldened by the smuggler's defiance. He held the crystal in one hand, and swirling light spilled from its surface and crawled up his arm, which quickly absorbed its sheen. His whole body was now outlined by the pale glow of magic. Dane's grip on his staff tightened. He pressed his thumb against its small metallic switch, and blue sparks gathered around the golden spearhead. Naletta did the same. "We won't say it again. Give us the—" Naletta began. The alchemist stretched out his fingers, and a veneer of gold spread across the surface of both their staffs like a coat of paint, laid on by an invisible hand. The switch on the side was now completely stuck in place, and the sparks at the end vanished, adding their weapons to his collection of useless gold trinkets. "Why don't you run along and sell those for some good Rillian before they change back?" the alchemist chuckled. "All you gotta do is keep your mouth shut," the smuggler added. "You can even buy yourself some sweets and new toys." His lips curved to a mocking smile. Naletta's nostrils flared while the alchemist chuckled. She glared at the smuggler, golden staff in hand, before she lunged toward the alchemist and slammed it against his side. He fell to the ground with a startled grunt, and the crystal fell from his hands. Naletta jumped after it, but tripped when he grabbed her ankle. Dane faced the smuggler and slammed his staff in his direction. Before it landed, the smuggler's hand shot up and grabbed it. Dane tried to pull it back with a grunt, but the smuggler's grip was strong. "You could learn from your friend's sense of subversion." The smuggler glanced back at Naletta and the alchemist, who crawled after the rolling prize. It was within the alchemist's reach before Naletta knocked it away with her staff, sending it their way. "Dane! The Lumerant!" she yelled. He looked back to the smuggler, who'd released his grip on the staff and bolted down the dark corridor behind them. There was no way that he could chase after him and secure the crystal. Dane bit his lip and leapt towards the rolling sphere. As soon as his fingers grazed the surface, a brush of warmth spread from his hand and to the rest of his body. His stomach lurched, and it fell from his recoiling grasp. Back on his feet, the alchemist was quick to snatch the crystals before Naletta could. Dane bit back his shame and dashed after the alchemist, who sprinted through the wine cellar. They rushed up the stairs to see the window planks already back in place, now glistening solid gold. Naletta pushed against them, but they would not budge. Dane turned toward the adjacent windows, took a deep breath, and slammed his foot forward. The planks gave way, and with one more kick, he forced an opening. Naletta hurried ahead of him to climb through. By the time he followed, the alchemist was nearly out of sight. The crystal's gleam leaked through the thin fabric of his coat and clashed with the darkness around them as he hurried along. "Oi! Get back here!" Naletta screamed. The alchemist glanced back with a start and quickened his pace. He turned as soon as he could, darting down a crooked street that winded back towards the district's canals. The high buildings blurred past them as Dane's focus fixed on the glowing target ahead. 2 years of training with the City Watch, running through obstacle courses and doing laps around Avalton Park had given him an edge. The gap between them quickly closed as the alchemist panted. He looked back, and Dane could see the desperation in his eyes. He was just out of arm's reach. "Halt!" a voice boomed ahead of them. A figure emerged from the shadows, pointing a staff at the alchemist. He turned to flee, but Dane and Naletta ran right into him, knocking him backwards. With a final gulp, He threw up his hands. "You should have reported this to me at once." The uniformed guard stared at them sternly as Dane and Naletta led him back to the winery. His sleek blue uniform underscored the shabby make of the city watch's red garb. Bracers and a thin breastplate coated with the same lusterless black stone marked him as a member of the Umbral Guard. The Order's insignia, a sun setting behind a shield, was engraved on the armor. "We followed Peric's lead. He said that he already reported to you," Naletta said. Dane clenched his teeth. She'd chosen her words carefully, yet the implication remained. The guard stared thoughtfully at them. He had dark brown skin, wavy hair, and an expression that mingled an unyielding sense of order and pensive curiosity. Despite only being a few years their senior, he carried himself with an authority that made him seem decades older. "My triad and I had investigated his claims and found no winery," he said plainly. Dane looked up at the wooden sign above the door. The alchemist stood between Naletta and Dane. He was now wearing a wrist clamps made from the same stone that plated the guard's armor, connected by iron chains. "Seems like you managed to find what we could not. You still should have reported this to Umbral Guard, however," the Umbral Guard said. "And let this cretin get away?" Naletta asked. The alchemist glared at her. "Don't take it personally," Dane said to him. "She's just in the heat of the moment is all." "Quite a kick you have there," the guard commented at the broken boards over the window. Splintered wood pierced by nails sprawled across the ground. Dane found himself grinning at his own handiwork. The guard walked to the second window and placed his hand over the golden planks. "You two wait with him. Those shadestone cuffs should keep him from using his magic, but still best to keep the guard up until I come back." Dane and Naletta looked at each other anxiously as they waited for the Umbral Guard to return. It was nearly impossible to tell whether he was impressed, annoyed, or both. Naletta maintained a tight grip on the alchemist's arm. "Ugh, you're squeezing too hard," the alchemist complained. "I've already surrendered, so why don't you two be kind and loosen up a little?" "So you can escape?" "I don't think so," Dane said. The alchemist shuffled in an attempt to break free, but Dane and Naletta maintained a firm hold on him. Eventually, he gave up with an exasperated sigh. After what felt like ages, the Umbral Guard climbed back through the window. "Looks like the cellar is connected to the tunnels. The smuggler's long gone by now. You're lucky he didn't bring reinforcements." Formerly a network of crystal mines, the tunnels beneath the city were a convoluted labyrinth and a smuggler's paradise. Dane heard that one could spend their whole life traversing them without retreading ground. Some even claimed they spanned the entire country, extending as far south as Viara. "Seems the old barkeep was telling the truth after all," the guard said. "Still, something is amiss. We've searched this area countless times. Where were you stationed prior to your escapade here?" "The water market," Dane answered uneasily. "So you've neglected your post," the guard raised a brow. "No," Naletta said. "Peric approached me while I was making my rounds and asked specifically for Dane and me to investigate the winery. Since we're still in Ricala Port, we've done nothing wrong." Before the guard had a chance to reply, he looked over to see a man approaching. He wore a deep blue coat that matched the Umbral Guard uniform and was followed by 4 attendants in matching livery. Each wore the same blank expression as they marched soundlessly behind him. "Counselor Culsis," the Umbral Guard stiffened his stance. "Emmerich," he addressed the guard. Smile lines creased his aged face, which was framed by neatly combed gray hair and a carefully groomed beard. "I've heard that there was a commotion nearby regarding a stolen lumarint and figured that it was worth getting out of bed to see for myself." His eyes settled on Dane, then on Naletta, who held the glowing crystal. She handed it over. Culsis held it up to inspect. The colorless stone harbored an ethereal glow that flowed between vibrant hues of blues, red, orange, violets, and greens. Its gleam far surpassed the surrounding street lamps. Satisfied, Culsis pulled a satchel from his coat and tucked the orbs away. "May I ask what happened?" Emmerich explained everything. To Dane's surprise, he emphasized his and Naletta's ingenuity in finding the winery, their commitment to tracking down the so-called alchemist, and the success in securing the crystal rather than abandonment of their posts and failure to catch the smuggler. Incredible. Calcis turned to Naletta and Dane. Every Lumerind that's unaccounted for, in my books, puts the entire city at risk. Fortunately, a scheming alchemist didn't seem to pose a problem for you two. Calcis noticed Dane's staff, still solid gold. May I? Dane handed it to Calcis, who closely observed its golden surface while considering its weight. Truly remarkable shifting magic at work. He returned it to Dane and faced Emmerich. Peric's rumors spread quickly through the water market. He paused with a smile. And I admit, I occasionally visit his tavern for a pint or two. The captured alchemist glared at Calcis, who met his scorn with a pitied glance. Please, take him away, he said to Emmerich. Yes, sir. Emmerich pushed the alchemist ahead of him. Come on, off you go. He bowed his head to the counselor and smirked at Dane and Naletta before leaving with the captured alchemist. I'll be frank. You two have clearly proven yourselves worthy of joining the Umbral Guard ranks. I shall make a case for you both to the captain and the commander, provided this is what you want. Dane stared at the counselor in dumbfounded silence. Yes, Naletta blurted out, unable to contain her excitement. Yes. Thank you, counselor. Calcis beamed, seemingly amused by her enthusiasm. It would be an honor, Dane said at last. Thank you, counselor. I should be thanking you, Calcis held his satchel. However, I cannot make promises. The Day of Sorrows is only a couple days away, and the commander can be quite rigid. Nonetheless, I will be your advocate. Now, I'll leave you to your patrol. He shook both their hands before walking past his attendants, who followed him silently into the night. I knew this was worth the risk, Naletta said breathlessly as they ambled along the moonlit canal. I still can't believe it. It's not an invitation yet, Dane reminded her. You heard what he said about the commander and captain. Yes, but how could they say no? We found the Lumerind. And let the smuggler escape. Details. She waved her hand before her grin faded. You think that we could have caught him? Dane leaned against a nearby wall and gazed up at the starless sky. The last light from one of the nearby canal houses finally flickered away. I don't know. Dane, Naletta said, nearing a whisper. She looked up and down the empty street to make sure they were alone. I know. I was wrong to doubt you. Well, yeah, but that's not what I was going to say. The Lumerind. When I held it, it was warm to touch. Dane's smile evaporated. He had nearly forgotten the crystal's warmth. Was it the same for you? It was, he said quietly. Do you know what this means? Yes. Dane tried to sound less grim than he felt. He knew exactly what it meant for her and for him. They were casters. They could use magic.